Hey, welcome everybody to 10-Minute Trumpet Tips. I'm your host, Bobby Medina, and today we got a special guest artist, my very dear friend, Paul Barron, who's one of today's most highly sought after and highly respected lead and commercial player. This guy plays all kind of styles. He's played with so many people, it's impossible to list them all. Aerosmith, Natalie Cole. We've done shows together, many shows, he and I, Wayne Newton, Frankie Valli, and the Four Tops, Temptations. He also has toured for a number of years now with Disney musicals and other national touring shows. And I think currently you're with Disney's Frozen, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So you're always traveling all over the place, sometimes different countries. And what I'm kind of curious about, Paul, is how does a guy like you that's playing, I mean, you're on the road for months, right? Months out of the year,
Yes.
most of the year.
Sometimes years.
It feels like that, I'm sure. So how does a guy like you, remain really consistent? What goes into your routine, your maintenance, because you're playing day after day after day. I mean, I know that can get really hard, and I think everybody here would love to learn a little bit more about what you personally do to keep your chops going and maintain.
Sure. Well, a lot of it is just trying to figure out the needs of the show, the physical demands, musical demands, of course. But a lot of it is pacing and just trying to figure out when to step on the gas, when to ease off a little bit, how much you can push, and most importantly, maybe, is where that line is that you should never cross. Don't push past that point. And I mean this in effort level, your exertion, but also volume. Something that I've talked with other players about is try to figure out what your maximum volume is that you can play, and then figure out where the 85% mark of that is. Like, take one step back, a little less volume, but with the same intensity and musical integrity and equipment that you can generate, but with 15% left over in the spare tank.
Well,
so in other words, don't push it too hard.
Yeah, and exactly. And the trumpet's really loud in the first place. So I think a lot of us feel like, I got to really blow to get your sound out. But really, when you start listening for balance and stuff, I mean, we're at the top of the hierarchy when it comes to brilliance and volume, so we can back off, right?
Absolutely. And I think in some cases, we end up being our own worst enemy in that, as you said, the trumpet is a loud instrument anyway. It projects so well. But I've been in many situations, and probably will be again, that I have to remind myself over and over to trust the sound will carry, it'll project, even though we might not be able to hear ourselves as much as we do behind the bell. Just trust physically, if you're doing the right things and it feels correct, and it feels like you're blowing with enough intensity and everything, that it is projecting out there and getting picked up by the microphone as well.
Well, one of the things I know I've had issues with at times, and you're probably a master at this, it's really trying to figure out what the room is like, because like when I'm here at my home and I'm practicing, I got this beautiful, perfect situation. I mean, it's nice and reverberant. I know Doc Severin's that I've seen interviews with him, and he says I always look for a stairwell somewhere in a building, in a concrete building, so I can really hear things reverberate. But when you're playing in a pit, or sometimes we're playing in different types of rooms, it's dead. And when you don't hear anything coming back from you, how do you work that?
That's difficult. It comes down to a level of trust, I guess. And it's taken many, many years and a lot of bruised chops to try and figure this out. That I suppose Bobby Shew used to talk about roll your lips and feel the sensation of having great feeling chops, or at least good feeling chops, and try and internalize that and memorize that and be able to recreate it, even if we can't hear ourselves well enough. If it feels correct and you know that you're blowing the right way, you just have to sort of let it go and trust that it's actually getting out there. It's a lot easier said than done, that's for sure. And I'm certainly guilty of overblowing too often if I can't hear myself well enough. So part of the
Bob,
luxury.
sorry to interrupt.
No,
Bobby
it's okay.
had a thing that he taught me many years ago. I was a student of his when I was a kid. And one of the things he had talked about, he came to an idea one time. He used to play on the Don Kirshner rock concert shows. He was in the house band, and he said it was so loud he could never hear himself, and he started blowing himself out. So as a result, he came up with this exercise where you would stuff cotton balls in your ear, and you would play these legato quarter notes, starting at like triple P to triple F, and then back down to triple P, so you could feel what it feels like to play at all volumes, but not hear it outside you. So I guess it's like you're talking, it's a way of sort of internalizing this feeling.
Absolutely. And that's a great point to bring up too, that, because I'm doing this kind of work all the time and I'm using in-ear monitors and I've had a chance to get used to playing in that kind of situation, I now can trust myself more. But I wish I had either seen or heard Bobby talk about that, and then been smart enough to actually practice as a younger player with the earplugs in or the ball, whatever, to start learning how to trust my body, that it actually getting out. It took me many decades after probably other people figured it out for me to finally, get a handle on it and trust that if I'm doing things physically correct and it feels right, then it is right, and the sound is getting out there.
Well, let me ask you this, because this is just really off the cuff right now, but one of
Sure.
the things that I've had happen to me personally, and this comes from playing on really loud, in loud sort of rock horn section situations, but it can happen to you in any kind of a situation. I mean, classical musicians get it, symphony directors get it, and we get it as we age a little bit, and that's hearing loss. And
Sure.
so I have a little bit of hearing loss, more in one ear than the other, and one of my ears is particularly sensitive now, so I have to kind of baby it a little bit and sometimes play with earplugs in and stuff. Have you had any experience with that personally?
Absolutely. I've had tinnitus, I don't know for how many years, could be coming on about 20 years. And at first it's very disconcerting and distracting, especially you're trying to go to sleep and you're hearing this constant white noise or high-pitched hum that goes on, and it just won't go away, and it can drive you crazy. And then I read, or somebody told me or something, you kind of acknowledge it, maybe not embrace it, but acknowledge that it's there, and know that you can't get rid of it. It's just going to be part of you. And then it sort of sinks back into the background a little bit further, and so it doesn't bother you quite as much. But yeah, I've had that for maybe 20 years. And the same kind of thing, I have one ear that's particularly sensitive, and I have had my hearing tested a couple of times, and what they've found, or what they've told me, is that one ear, the sensitive one, although there is some hearing loss, mostly what it is that the threshold of pain starts earlier for some of us. Maybe that's the case for you as well,
Mm-hmm.
in that when they're starting the hearing test with certain frequencies and a very low decibel level, it doesn't hurt at all. But then as they start turning it up louder and louder and louder, where I go, stop, it's starting to hurt, is much sooner than maybe a lot of other people that aren't in the business of using their ears like we do.
Mm-hmm.
So same kind of thing as I'll put in earplugs to help save that one ear from being beat up too much. But it also helps just to feel that vibration or hear that vibration in your head. Like Bobby Shue was talking with the cotton balls,
Yeah.
so that you can start internalizing it.
Sometimes for me, I've been playing on some really loud gigs and my ears are a little beat up. And when I go home to practice, or when I practice the following day, or when I warm up or whatever, I got to have those earplugs in just to keep it from hurting, which is, I guess it's partially a sign of aging as well. And I'm sure there's a lot of people in this group that can probably relate to that. And
Sure.
you can, just so everybody knows out in the group, you guys can feel free to ask questions to Paul or to myself about some of these things if you'd like.
Yes, please.
On the string. So we'll end with another little bit because I was starting to talk to you about your routine and your maintenance, but you're the author of two great books under the brand name Trumpet Voluntarily, which I think is really clever. And there's a lot of great information in those. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what each book is about?
Sure. Well, the first book came around because a good friend of mine who was a publisher with a small company read some articles published at the time. And he just suggested, that's the start of a really good book. Why don't you try and expand that and see what happens? And I did. Fortunately, it was a cold winter, and I was in Cincinnati at the time, so there wasn't much appeal to get outside and do my normal, walking routine.
Yeah.
So I was inside a lot, and just I'd finish the show and I'd go back home and or back to the hotel and crack a beer, and I'd write, a few hundred words or something, and go to sleep and get up the next day. And with my coffee, I'd write a few hundred more words. Pretty soon, there was, I don't know how many chapters, 22 chapters or something.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole premise of that book, the subtitle being a holistic approach to maximizing practice through efficiency. So it was my way of putting down in words things that I'd learned over many years, being in the trenches and working, as you said,
Mm-hmm.
Long running shows, and just learning about the physical demands and how to wake up the next day and be able to do it all again in the next month and the next year and so on. And so I came up with all of these. There's a bunch of anecdotes in there, also exercises that I touch on, but mostly what it's doing is trying to teach people more aware of what their body, and feed it with the exercises, how to clean every day.
So we're experiencing some kind of delay here. Why don't you say that one more time, what you just
Sure.
said?
Yeah, the last thing is that I'm trying to teach people through that book, listen to their child, and do the to like wipe the slate clean chops so that you can start every day fresh again, and be able to recreate that same really good performance on a consistent level every single day. So that's the first book.
Yeah, that's the one where you have like the morning after routine and all that.
Exactly.
Very, very cool. And now what's the second book? What's the premise of that?
Well, the second book came out of, and there was never an intent to write this book, but I heard from people literally all over the world. I had people in Uganda and New Zealand and Tokyo, all over the world saying, hey, well, I like the idea of your morning after warm up. And I can talk about any of these things, maybe in another episode, I suppose. So there's three different warm ups. The morning, having played a heavy schedule after week, and how to, as I said, slate clean, to start with chops every day. There's another warm up that I call gig day warm up. So that presumes that you're not totally beat up. It's fine, but you have to do a good routine to remain consistent and playing efficiently every single day. So that's a way to set things up. It's about 45 minutes to an hour. And I do that sort of late morning, early afternoon. And then the third warm up, this came from doing a lot of adjudicating at high school jazz festivals and so on, where I would walk up and down the hallways and hear these screaming trumpet notes coming out of the practice rooms. And then they'd come onto stage and they had nothing left. And I realized I was really guilty of leaving all the best notes in the practice room and not bringing them out to stage. So that third warm up is a way to teach people, including, and remind myself as well, to just warm up enough that we got things going, air is going, the sound is working, the chops are vibrating efficiently, and then put the horn away and save all the best notes for the show that night. So those are the three warm-ups, and they're comprehensively, entirely written out now. And there's explanations as to why I do them in a certain way, or why I do it at a certain time of day, or for what purpose, like the morning after. What's the purpose of that? You know, it's to again, wipe that slate clean.
Right.
So that's what I even have it right here. Trumpet voluntarily.
Yeah,
Oops,
wonderful.
got a little bit of a glare there, but the brand name, that comes from my wife. She was sending me a whole bunch of texts while I was sitting in the pit doing Newsies way back, and I wasn't supposed to be using a cell phone, but there I am with it up on my music stand, and I'm scrolling through, and I see trumpet voluntarily. I can't use that because I thought trumpet voluntary. It's been done.
Right.
But then I read it a little closer and I thought, well, that's a great idea, because it immediately drew my eyes to it. Maybe it will for other people too.
Well, I think anybody in this group would definitely benefit from it. I know I work out of it on a regular basis. It's one of those rotating books that goes through mine, through my list. And we can get that, if people are interested in it, they can go to qpress.ca, right?
That's correct. Yes. CA for Canada, if that helps people remember. Q, just the letter Q, press.ca.
Okay. Well, cool. Well, let's end our 10-minute trumpet tips right there. Thanks so much for being on. And because we're in the situation we're in, I'm going to have to give you an elbow to say goodbye.
There you go.
And sign off. Thanks so much for being part of this.
All right. Thank you, Bob.
All righty. Bye-bye, Paul.
Bye.